a recent graduate from NYU's Cultural Reporting and Criticism program. And last year, I learned that fish poop can be used to grow vegetables.
I'm Elizabeth, a graduate student in NYU's Literary Reportage program, and I always knew that fish poop could be used to grow vegetables.
We're the co-founders of Fishel Aquaponics, and today we're going to talk with you about our design process for our aquaponics kits. But first, we're going to talk with you about what aquaponics is and how we got started in the venture.
Aquaponics is a way of growing plants using fish. You pump water from a fish tank into a tub of plants, and the plants use the nutrients from fish waste and purify the water. Then, the water is returned to the fish tank. In small kits, people have pet fish and get to watch an ecosystem and have some greenery in their home. In bigger setups, people are able to raise fish they can eat. Compared to conventional agriculture, plants in aquaponic systems grow much more quickly, and the systems use fewer resources and release fewer greenhouse gases and pollutants. So, how did we get started working on an indoor aquaponics kit? At the start of the pandemic, there were often no vegetables for sale in my grocery store. I lived in an apartment, so didn't have access to soil, but I did already own fish. I decided to look for a simple to run and attractively designed indoor aquaponics kit to grow my own vegetables. Except when I started to look for a kit, what I wanted didn't exist. The countertop size kits in the market were bulky, and the reviews were terrible. They said they were noisy, or I've broken, leaked, and sometimes killed the fish. And I'm very attached to my pet fish. Ella, my co-founder, has a lot of experience with farming, so we partnered together to build the first simple to use, beautiful countertop aquaponics kit.
So we knew we wanted a 5 or 10 gallon aquarium, something someone could put on their countertop. So our first problem was figuring out the ratio of the aquarium to the grow bed and how many fish to how many plants, and also what kind of fish and what kind of plants. Because there has been a lot of research into larger tanks, 300 or 500 gallon, but for a lot of reasons those ratios for the large tanks don't carry over when you're working with a small system. So we solved this problem by building a completely modular system, because we knew we'd want to be able to do trial and error, and we wanted to be able to swap out parts really quickly. And NYU's prototype fund was really pivotal in our first prototypes, both in terms of funding and talking with experts, but also giving us the framework to think about the prototyping process. And we sort of learned the difference between a look-like prototype, which is a visual mock-up and maybe doesn't solve the problem at all, and a work-like prototype, which doesn't necessarily look like the final design, but does the thing you want it to do. And so we realized we needed to split our design process into two parts, and first make work-like prototypes where we could solve these problems, and then apply those lessons to the look-like prototypes. So if you look from the top down, the height of the light can be changed. The grow tubs aren't attached to the tanks, so we can mix and match them as we need to. And then the tubes that the water runs through, those aren't permanently attached either, so we can try different numbers of tubes and diameters. And then we also have easy access to the tops of the aquariums, so we can check on fish health, we can swap out pumps, and we can change the fish combinations as we need to. Finally, another strategy that helped us save money and move quick was using really simple yes-no tests. And so when we're trying to figure out if the plants were getting enough nutrients from different fish combinations, we could have bought some really expensive testing equipment and retested the water each time we sort of changed the fish combination, but that was kind of too fiddly and too expensive, and we wanted something simple. So we came up with a couple yes-no tests that we did. We would purposefully stunt some seedlings and then transplant them and see what happened. And once we had the ratios more or less figured out, we did a third really simple comparison test where we had a hydroponics kit that worked already, and that is just adding liquid fertilizer in a sort of regimented, controlled manner. And so we grew the same plants in both. And so that way we could just compare that the plants we were growing aquaponically did as well or better than these plants in this very controlled environment where everything was measured out. Once we figured out some of those ratios, we built another work-like prototype, which you can see here, that uses the fish to plant ratio, specific types of plants. It's still modular, we can still swap out some parts, but this will really let us test out this setup for a couple of months. And then on the other more modular systems, we can continue experimenting with new plants and new combinations. The second problem we wanted to solve with these work-like prototypes was figuring out how to make the kit operate entirely quietly. And we've interviewed a lot of people who'd purchased kits And a constant complaint was that they made strange sounds. They either dripped or gurgled or buzzed, and people found it annoying. So to go about this, first we identified the 4 noise points in a kit. As you can see, the first point is in the grow bed above the aquarium where the water actually enters the tube to leave the grow bed. The water can also make noise as it is flowing through the tube. The third point is where the water breaks the surface area in the aquarium as it leaves the grow bed. The fourth point is the pump, and depending what it's pressed against, it can make buzzing sounds. So when we were trying to figure out how to make the water flow completely silently, one thing we realized was that narrowing the tubes at different points actually significantly reduced the sound of the water flowing through them. We wanted some way to narrow the tubes, but we didn't want to have to manufacture tubes with sort of alternating thicknesses or widths or diameters. So we just used a quick and dirty solution, which are these clothespins. And this was just an example of, we knew the solution could involve narrowing the tube, but we didn't want to actually manufacture tubes with different widths. We wanted something quick and easy, which was a household item we already had. We took advantage of having the modular system where we could swap out parts, and we really started with the simplest scenario first. So first we had a completely empty tank, no gravel in it, and a tub with no clay pebbles. So there was nothing that sort of had an irregular shape, and there were no objects that were pulled towards the water as it created a suction going down the tube. And we experimented with different materials, different size diameters to control the flow rate going back down, and figured out what worked. And so then we added clay pebbles to the tub, and of course it stopped working. It started making sounds. But we took some of the lessons that had worked with the empty situation and applied them. And then we kept building from there. So then we figured out how to keep this silent when we had gravel down in here. And then when we had things touching the tank that could carry the vibration of the pump. And so sort of breaking it into these stages and taking the lessons that did work from the previous stage and applying it, we were able to sort of piece together how to make the tanks completely silent.
We're excited about this venture because even if the vegetables are back on my grocery store shelves, conventional farming still has the same problems with pollution and emissions. Our long-term goal is to make simple, attractive kits of all sizes that will make it easier for people to sustainably grow food for their family and for themselves. Our next step is to take the lessons we've learned from these work-like prototypes, combine them with information we've gathered in over 100 customer discovery interviews, and then design our first looks-like prototype. And if you want to follow our progress and the progress of our fish, sign up for our mailing list at fishelaquaponics.wixsite.com/fresh vegetables.